What's up, Willowbrook? Today we are in Daniel chapter 7. Now there's a lot that happens in this chapter, so just try to stick with me, okay? If you look at this chapter as a whole, it could really be split into two parts. There's verses 1 through 14 where it talks about Daniel's dream and the four beasts. And then there's the second half, verses 15 through 28, that talks about the explanation of this dream. Now, in the first half, again, we read about these four beasts, and each one seems to become like more terrifying and more powerful. And as we continue to read, we find out that these four beasts ultimately represent four kings or four kingdoms. When we get to the fourth beast, which is the most terrifying of them all, we read that the horns on the fourth beast represent 10 kings that will rule from that kingdom. Then all of a sudden we read about this other horn that emerges with, a mouth that's basically speaking against God and his people. And we read that this king will be given dominion and will actually oppress God's people for a while. Now, it sounds pretty bad, but obviously there's more to the chapter than just these four beasts. Starting in verse 9, we begin to read about the Ancient of Days, which is another way of describing God. So we find God sitting on his throne in almost this courtroom-like setting, and he judges these beasts. He judges these nations. He takes their authority and their dominion away. And then in verse 13, there's this mysterious character that comes into view called the Son of Man, one like the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven. Now that term Son of Man isn't super mysterious by itself. It essentially means a human being. But what's interesting is a couple of things we see about this character. It says that he's coming with the clouds of heaven, right? So who can do that? I know I can't do that. In Psalm 104:3, it says, God makes the clouds his chariot. So this sounds a lot like God, but yet we're talking about a human being. And one other thing that we see is that God gives this Son of Man authority, glory, sovereign power over all. And it says that all nations worshiped this person. That's a lot, right? So we're supposed to be worshiping God and God alone, but yet we see this Son of Man being worshiped by all nations. It says his dominion is an everlasting dominion and will not pass away. And his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. Now, again, stick with me. Who are we talking about here, right? This is kind of what we need to start trying to figure out. Who would be given authority to rule forever? And you probably already have some ideas in your mind. But in 2 Samuel 7, God makes this covenant with David. It's called the Davidic Covenant. And he essentially says that David's offspring will rule and reign forever. So God makes this promise with David that someone from his lineage will rule and reign forever. Now, this is the Messiah. This is the Christ, the anointed one that God's people were looking for, and they were waiting for, this king to come and rule and reign. Now, who do we know that comes from David's line that ultimately fulfills this promise? This is where the Sunday school answer fits perfectly. It's Jesus, right? We're talking about Jesus. Jesus refers to himself actually most commonly as the Son of Man. We see this, I think it's a great throwback to this chapter in Matthew 26:64. Jesus is talking to Caiaphas and he says, from now on, you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven. So centuries before Jesus ever walks on earth, fully God, fully man, we see this vision from Daniel that he's talking about Jesus. He is the mysterious Son of Man. So as we read, we find that God judges other nations and gives full power and authority to Jesus. But there's one last thing I want you to see. Not only does Jesus rule and reign, but we too will rule and reign with Christ. In verse 18, it says that the holy people of the Most High God will receive the kingdom and will possess it forever. And again, in verse 26, it says, after the fourth beast's power is taken away, the sovereignty, power, and greatness of all the kingdoms under heaven will be handed over to the holy people of the Most High. That's me and you. God gives power to Jesus, and ultimately, we are able to reign with him and through him and because of him. Now, I don't know exactly what that looks like, but it's exciting. So ultimately, this chapter was written to give us hope that whoever is in power around us, whatever is taking place around us, one day God will judge all the nations. One day God will judge all the evil, and Jesus will reign. But because of what he's done, we will rule and reign with him. So take a look around you today, whatever is going on, whether it looks good or bad, take hope that we have a future in Jesus. God bless you.